All wings report in.
HouseDog, standing by.
Mother Goose, standing by.
Lock S-foils in attack position. Animal Squadron ready for battle.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Animal Squadron podcast. I'm your host, HouseDog, and with me, as always, my favorite person to fly around the galaxy with, the Chewie to my Han, Mother Goose. What's up, buddy?
Hey everybody, not too much. How you been lately?
I've been alright. You came in really excited with that intro there. I wasn't expecting that much pep.
Wow, thanks. I'm actually really excited for this one. I feel like I have a lot to say.
Well, that's good, because Jedi is not one of my favorite films. I found myself just watching the movie most of the time.
Yeah, that's okay. You know, sometimes you just gotta sit back and enjoy it.
I'm not a huge Jedi fan. It's kind of at the bottom of my list whenever it comes to, like, my favorites, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would definitely be, I'd say mid-tier for me. Not my favorite, definitely not my least favorite. I definitely understand a lot of the criticisms to it, but I also still really enjoy it. Part of it might be nostalgia, you know, clouding my judgment, but I like it.
Yeah, we all have that. So are you ready to get into it?
I am, yes.
All right, great. Starting off with the crawl, as always.
Of course.
It's really more of a question than a note, and I just wanted to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
Why did they, the only thing I have from the crawl is why did they build a second Death Star?
Yeah, you know, that's actually something I wanted to talk about as well. I think they were already building it. So it's been approximately, I actually went and looked this up. It's been approximately 5 years since the Battle of Yavin. 4 to 5. It's not, they're not completely sure, but around that time frame. I think they were already working on it before the first Death Star was destroyed.
Do you think the Emperor was going to have like a fleet of Death Stars?
You know, at what we know from, obviously this may not have been the original plan, but from what we know from episode 9, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I guess, like, explaining it in universe-wise, yeah, that's a good answer. But I mean, now that we do have the sequel trilogy, like, you can see how that could have been the Emperor's plan as well. Yeah,
and think about it. The Death Star is supposed to be the ultimate weapon to spread fear and to control the galaxy. If the galaxy is a big place, having multiple Death Stars would definitely lend to that, to help the galaxy in control. So that's something that I was really thinking about throughout the course of this film, because, I mean, yes, it's obviously still in construction. There's still a lot that needs to be done, but it's fully operational by the end, so I don't know. I just really don't think they could have done all of that in just 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, do you have any more notes on the crawl?
No. Nothing really stood out to me this time.
Yeah. I feel like it was a good crawl overall. Again, it helped set up the film, but like you said, nothing really stuck out that much. And we're back on Tatooine.
Well, hold on.
Oh wait, we're not on Tatooine yet. We see the Death Star, the new Death Star, in its mid-constructed form. I completely forgot. I have like 4 or 5 notes on this. Oh, which actually
I've said it once.
Most of it.
I've said it 1,000 times. I just love Star Destroyers, and it hasn't changed, and I don't think my love for them will ever change. Because that opening shot with the not the Death Star, but yeah, the Death Star, but the Star Destroyer coming into view, I'm just like, man, they are so cool.
Right? And I also just wanted to point out how many kyber crystals were destroyed. Because, I mean, they go through so many building the first one and just so many more with the second one.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, like, how much. And I have a note for that here in a second. But my next thing is how nervous the commander is before Vader even comes out of the shuttle. Like, you can visibly see,
Right.
like, in his face and his body language, how nervous he is for Vader to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was really good acting as well.
Yes, definitely. And poor guy just thought it was going to be Vader. Oh, nope. Palp's coming too.
Yeah, which that brings me to my next question is what is the Emperor doing all the time? Because from the dialogue between Vader and Commander Jerjerrod, it doesn't seem like the Emperor really physically oversees a lot of his projects. So I want to know what he's doing out there. And I'm sure now, with today's all the different like Star Wars media we have, I'm sure there's a book explaining it or a comic explaining what the Emperor's doing in between these times.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, maybe less on the military side, but I'm sure we got to remember that Palpatine was a politician as well. I'm sure he's doing a lot of the more political side of keeping the galaxy in order. He not only is the Emperor, but he was a symbol. I guess, he used the Jedi's quote-unquote attack of him and, blamed his deformities on the Jedi. And at the beginning, the galaxy loved him. They stood behind him, and a lot of that is probably keeping up that facade. Even though most of the galaxy knows at this point the Empire isn't that great, I still think he's probably trying to keep a good appearance, but also working on other projects like the Death Star 2 and getting clones for himself, making sure that's set up for when he dies. And I think the whole point of the First Order is Palpatine left a list of orders for his loyal servants to follow once he died.
Well, I mean, we get a little bit of that story in the second Battlefront game, the new one.
Right.
About that. But I mean, I guess I just want to know, like, whenever, or I guess I'd like to see, like, it doesn't have to be a movie, and I could be wrong. I'm pretty behind on the books and everything, but, there could be a book explaining it or a comic series of, like, I just want to know what Palps is doing, from the time he first establishes the Empire to where we see him in Episode 4 and the time in between the end of Episode 4 and just what's going on, because we don't even physically see the Emperor until Jedi.
Right. And yeah, that would be really awesome. And I think to kind of just summarize what I was saying, to make it maybe a little more concise, it's more of future planning. The Sith had been planning the takeover of the galaxy for a very long time, and then they did. So what's next? And I think a lot of that was him figuring out the direction of the Sith, which may not be as exciting, but somebody's got to do it.
I would say I'd be super interested in, like I said, in whatever like media format that could be in to see that, though. It's one of my Star Wars wishes, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That would be great.
And I mean, who knows? We could get that with season 3 of Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, we get to see a little bit already in Mandalorian in terms of the clones, but expanding on that
but
more
not much.
would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which now
I
that...
agree.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're on Tatooine for real this time.
Well, I've got one note before we get there.
No!
I have to do it to you at least once an episode.
Of course.
And to be
of
fair, you
course.
did it to me many times last episode, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
So, it was just a funny little thing that I noticed, but how Vader, at the end of their conversation with the commander, Vader calls himself forgiving. And obviously, with, we just reviewed Empire, Vader is not a very forgiving person, so I can't even imagine how the Emperor deals with failure. If, we see
Right.
Vader in the last film just force choking everyone that doesn't complete his objectives.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for definitely. Which actually, that brings me up something I did want to talk about. We mentioned this in our last episode. Why did Vader stop Boba from shooting Chewie? And I actually found a subreddit forum talking about it, and the general consensus was that Vader knew that if it messed up the carbonite chamber, it could cause an explosion. Or two, he wanted Chewie alive to lure Luke in, or both.
I don't know, though. I'd believe the first one more than I would the second answer, because Luke is already on his way.
Right, and he'd still have Leia. But those were the two big topics that the community was talking about. And I felt like we brought it up last time, so I was like, yeah, now that we're talking about him being quote-unquote forgiving, it'd be a good time to mention it.
No, I definitely like that you were able to get out there and see what else, other fans have come up with. I like I said, I think the first theory is more plausible in my opinion, but again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree, because, it also ties into the second one. If they blow up the carbonite chamber, they can't lure Luke in with Leia and Chewie, because they're dead.
Yeah. So, okay, now I'm ready to go to Tatooine, but I have
Okay.
another thing. But it's Tatooine related.
Okay.
So while I was getting ready to watch this episode, I went ahead and watched the deleted scenes for this movie, and one of them was Luke in the cave right before we get the scene of R2 and 3PO walking to Jabba's palace. It's Luke in like this little, I guess it's a cave on Tatooine, and he's building his lightsaber. Well, he's not building it. He's like putting the finishing touches on it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that before?
I haven't.
You should like pull it up real quick and check it out.
Okay, I will.
Because honestly, I would have liked to have seen that in the movie.
Yeah, I will. Now that I know where it is, I will definitely watch it at some point.
Yeah, I thought it would have been cool, but since you haven't seen it, there's not really much to talk about.
I know. I'm a fake fan. Ugh.
No, not like that. I just meant not really much happens.
I know.
It's just like
I'm giving you a hard time. Yeah.
it's like Luke with a little tool, and he's putting the finishing touches on his lightsaber, and you get this overview, and you see the Millennium Falcon and his X-Wing, and he's talking to R2, and 3PO's on the outside of the cave just waiting for him, and then that leads into 3PO and R2 walking up to Jabba's.
Yeah, okay. So now, saying we're talking about the lightsaber, I want to bring this up. Where do you think Luke got his kyber crystal?
I don't know. I mean, it's alluded to later in the film from one of Vader's lines, but Luke has obviously been training, and we'll get into it
Right.
more as we go through the film. So I
Yes,
guess
that's
maybe
something I definitely
Obi-Wan
wanna talk
gave him
about.
some guidance.
Yes. I've seen a theory that it's possibly Qui-Gon's.
I'm sure by now, since Disney has taken over, there's an answer somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. And also, I can't remember or not, did Yoda lose his lightsaber during his battle with Palpatine? Because if not, it could potentially be Yoda's as well.
Yeah,
Or just
Yoda
some
did
random
use-
crystal.
Yoda lost his lightsaber.
Okay, yeah, I know you've watched that film. What am I trying to say? More recently than I have. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I watched episode 3 like maybe a week and a half ago.
Nice. Anyway, yes, we were just talking about his saber. I kind of feel like it might be Qui-Gon's, but we'll never know until Disney tells us for sure. Or maybe they already have.
That's gonna have to be one of those things that we look up and give the answer next time.
Yes, definitely. Now we're on Tatooine.
Talk about Tatooine, my friend.
For
I know
real
you
this
want
time.
to. I know you
Okay.
want to. Go ahead.
Sorry. My first note was back on Tatooine, and I was referencing the crawl because it mentions it there, and I don't know why. Just seeing that note has just had me really eager to talk about Tatooine. We're back. I think it's great to actually be back on Tatooine, to see it again. I really like how it was tied in with this with not just this film, but all the others, it being Jabba's palace, Han's connection there, him obviously being there in Carbonite. But we start with R2-D2 and C-3PO walking through Tatooine once again, which I think is very poetic in regards to episode 4. But I think really the only note I have in terms of their conversation is I think it's really funny how obvious it is, even from the beginning, that C-3PO doesn't know the plan.
Yeah, that's I have that note as well. In here. My first one though is whenever they walk up to the door and 3PO knocks and there's not an immediate answer and he's just like, "Oh, no one's here. Let's leave."
Gotta get out of here. Yep. I
love
also wanted to point out how he mentions Jabba and how horrible a person he is, and I just think it's really funny because obviously over the past 23, 24 years since his memory was wiped, he's learned about Jabba again, but again, I think it's really poetic the fact that C-3PO was made on Tatooine and probably had a ton of knowledge on Jabba that was just erased.
I don't think I've ever thought of that, but yeah, you're 100% right.
I always am. I've never been wrong on a single thing on this podcast, ever.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. So, it was funny while I was watching this. My girlfriend and I were talking the other day, and she was just asking me stuff about Star Wars because she's not a real big fan or anything, but she knows that I enjoy it, so she talks to me about it sometimes. She asked me what my favorite droid was. And I completely forgot about the doorbell droid thing, because I think that is honestly one of my favorite droids in all of the Star Wars universe.
We've actually, I don't know if you remember, we've had a long discussion on an earlier episode about how we both wished we could get that as an actual doorbell.
I think that was our first Mando episode, right?
I think so too, yeah, because it appears there as well.
Yeah, and I was so glad that they brought it back for that.
Me too.
Because I love the doorbell droid. I think it's such an interesting thing. And, I mean, these days it's pretty much a reality, with, like, the Ring doorbells and stuff like that. Like,
right. It would not
but
be hard
until
for
I can
someone
get
to
an
build.
exact one like Jabba's, I will not be fulfilled in life.
It's also got to be able to actually open and close and lock the door as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay, favorite droids. I gotta go with the Gonk. The Gonk droid. It's too good.
I figured you were gonna talk about Gonk, and yes, Gonk is up there. We love the Gonk droid. Everyone loves Gonk. He is like one of the biggest Star Wars memes ever. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't think about the doorbell droid. I love him so much.
So, you said you didn't think about it. What droid did you actually tell your girlfriend when she asked?
I said R2.
A great answer. I mean, a classic. You can't go wrong with R2.
A little basic, I will admit. I should have said Gonk. What was I thinking?
Hey, but did the doorbell droid kill actual super battle droids? I think not.
Well, neither did Gonk.
That is true. But, you know.
If Gonk was capable, he would, though.
If Gonk was capable, yeah, for sure. Literally, all Gonk needed was some arms. George Lucas knew that if Gonk had arms, he'd be too powerful.
He'd be too powerful. He would have had his own fan club. I mean, Gonk already has his own fan club. What am I saying?
Yeah. I need some fan art of Gonk with, like, really strong human arms. Stat.
I don't think anyone needs that. The next thing is it's another droid note, but whenever R2 and 3PO have been admitted into Jabba's palace, the spider droid that walks in behind them while they're walking. I just always thought that thing was interesting. I mean, I'm terrified of spiders and I hate them so much, but I always just thought it was cool.
Me too. I think the only note I have in terms of that first little sequence is as powerful as Jabba is, you'd think he'd have a nicer palace. It's kind of dingy.
Well, he is like an intergalactic gangster who is disgusting, so I think it fits him pretty well.
He is disgusting. Yeah, that's a good point. I just want to know what he's putting his money towards, if not a nice home. Drugs. Probably space drugs.
Space drugs, guns, other nefarious plans that are probably cool but terrible for the galaxy.
Yep. My next note isn't until we see Salacious. You have anything before that?
Yeah. The fact that R2 always knows what the plan is, like you mentioned earlier.
Of course, yep.
Because now I'm at the point where R2's playing the message for Jabba, and 3PO's freaking out because Luke mentions, like, these droids are now yours, like, I hope we can, come to a deal, and, nothing has to, really, like, get to bloodshed or anything like that. And how Luke is now calling himself a Jedi Knight.
Yes. Yeah. Good for him.
Even though later he has to ask Yoda if he is a Jedi.
Right. I kid you not, throughout my notes, I wrote, Luke is so confident, like, over and over, for just, like, things like that. He confidently says, I am a Jedi Knight, even though Yoda hasn't officially made him a Jedi yet. And other things he does throughout the film, which is good. It's good for him to have some confidence, but I think that's a really good point to make, that he wasn't actually officially a Jedi yet. And I actually have a lot I want to talk about in terms of his training and what he's been doing for the last year to 2 years, but we can talk about that when we get there.
Okay. Yeah, my next note is just that Salacious Crumb is there.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about how I forgot the quack and monkey lizards were sentient. Like, I was thinking of, like, we talked a lot about how in The Mandalorian they were cooking and about to eat one, and what a great Easter egg that was. When we talked about that, I was thinking them as just an animal, and I was like, okay, whatever, they're eating it. But through here, it definitely seems like a sentient, intelligent being with thoughts and emotions, and they're just casually eating them.
Well, to quote the great Qui-Gon Jinn, oh no, am I wrong? Was it Qui-Gon? I gotta say it was Qui-Gon, where they meet Jar Jar and he says the ability to speak doesn't make you intelligent.
Yes, that was Qui-Gon. You make a good point. You make a very good point. But also...
But then again, intelligence and sentience are not the same thing. But yes,
right.
I agree, because Salacious has, like he speaks. Like, he has lines. I mean, they're all in Huttese, but he does speak.
And I definitely think that's a really good point to make about Qui-Gon, but we also didn't see Qui-Gon eat Jar Jar Binks, so...
But should he have?
Okay. I know we've already passed this, but while we were talking about that, I thought I would just look it up. I looked up where Luke got his Kyber crystal, and it says it was in a chest on Tatooine, right next to Anakin's lightsaber in Star Wars. So when Luke returned to the desert planet, Return of the Jedi, it would still be there, holding a Kyber crystal for the taking to construct his new lightsaber. I really think it was Qui-Gon's.
Where did that crystal come from?
Exactly. Why was it in Obi-Wan's possession?
Yeah, I mean, the last time we see Qui-Gon's lightsaber is with Obi-Wan.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke's lightsaber has at least a faint resemblance to Qui-Gon's, correct?
Qui-Gon's was really basic. There wasn't really much done to it. It was just his and Obi-Wan's are pretty identical in Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon's doesn't have really any interesting, like, ornate kind of type deals.
You know, I'm actually thinking, the lightsaber I'm thinking about is, I believe, Obi-Wan's second lightsaber. I believe in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Salacious Crumb got us all the way to lightsabers somehow.
I'm so sorry. Yes, okay. It bears a resemblance to Obi-Wan's, one of his lightsabers.
I think it's more like Obi-Wan's, which, I mean, I have a note about it later, but Palpatine makes a comment that Luke's new lightsaber is a lot like his father's, and Anakin's didn't look anything like Luke's second I
don't think it really looked
Luke's
like any of his
lightsaber,
lightsabers.
because Anakin's first lightsaber was Luke's first lightsaber, so this is technically Luke's first lightsaber.
Right. And I thought about that too.
If anything, it resembles Obi-Wan's.
Right. I think it was more of like a metaphorical resembles, as in the fact that they were both Jedi who actually got that far in their training to make a lightsaber.
I just think it was one of those things that, since George made these films first and then the prequel second, it's just one of those things where, obviously, with the times, that line doesn't really hold up anymore. Because there are other things like that in Star Wars.
Right. And I think that's a really good point. But also, it's clear from Episode 4 that Luke's quote-unquote first lightsaber was his father's lightsaber.
Yeah, I don't know, we were talking about lightsabers and that made me think of that, so.
Yeah. Okay. My next note is in the room with all the droids, if you have anything before that.
No, that's my next note, about the droid torture room.
The droid torture room. And so, I feel like this isn't something we'll probably talk about long, but it's clear there that the droids feel pain, Which leads to the question I brought up last time. How sentient
Are
are these
droids
droids?
sentient?
Again,
Is this is this your new thing that you question the sentience of all beings within Star Wars?
Yes. Which we can talk about this in another episode, so we can actually go in depth. But I think this is a good check mark for the yes column.
Or is that just their programming to tell them to feel pain?
Okay, all right, you make a good point.
How
What
much
is
is
your note
programming
on the
and how much is sentience?
I don't know. I mean, why would you program a droid to scream? Like, what use does that have? Like, when it's quote unquote feeling pain that a living being would feel.
I'm not entirely
Like, what
sure.
kind of sick mind came up with that?
I don't. Maybe it's to give them like more humanity. You know, like with how, like if it wasn't for Clone Wars, like you wouldn't look at the clones the same way. Like
Right,
Clone Wars
right.
is what gave clones a humanity, because in the films we don't really see their individuality. I mean, you do a little bit with Obi-Wan and Cody's relationship, but I mean, even
Yeah.
then, it's not much.
Right. And something to go along with that. I've seen a lot. This is something I should have talked about when we talked about the prequels, and I actually might have brought it up. But one of the biggest arguments I've seen against the prequels is that a lot of the characters, like the clones and a lot of the Jedi, we only get a real connection to because of the Clone Wars. But counter argument to that, if the Clone Wars is 7 seasons, that's so many hours of content. There's no way they could have possibly fit that in between the very end of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Like, those movies would have been ridiculously long.
I'm 100% okay with that, though.
Yeah, I'm so glad we got the Clone Wars. It is amazing. But
If the Lord of the Rings can have the extended versions that are almost 4 hours long apiece, why can I not have a Revenge of the Sith that is almost 4 hours long? Tell me why,
Disney-
Elijah. Why must my life
Disney.
be this way?
there's a 4-hour cut of Revenge of the Sith. Disney just needs to stop being cowards and release it.
It would be madness.
It would be. But also, we are talking about The Return of the Jedi. I know it's my fault for getting us off track, but here I am, getting us back on track. What was your note on
Get
the
us
droid
back on
torture
track.
room?
I just like it. I like the like overseer droid.
Yeah.
I just like him. He's funny. I
He is,
like
yeah.
how they made that character. Like, they really gave him, like, I would say, like, individuality or like uniqueness. Like the overseer droid, like, it's almost like he doesn't even see himself as a droid. The way that he like speaks and carries himself, I guess.
Yeah,
Even though
he's
it's
got a
just
little
like a
bit of
metal
a
puppet,
superiority
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what? I don't like him anymore. You're right. I know you were giving reasons to why you do like him, but pointing that out, he's kind of a douche. I don't like that droid anymore.
I like him. I think he's funny.
He is fun.
That's all I have about the torture room, is just that I like it.
Nice. Yeah. Sorry, I just thought the way you phrased that was funny. Just, oh yeah, a torture room. I like it.
I thought it was cool. I don't know. Maybe I have something wrong with me. Who knows? But more importantly is seeing the Max Rebo band.
That was my next note as well. How do you feel about the Max Rebo band? I know a lot of people really hate them.
I think that's the point of the Max Rebo band, because again, this is one of those like changes, is the song that you hear these days is not the song that was in the original movie, and apparently that's a really big deal to some people.
Right. And
But we've
You know,
only,
it
you and
is-
I have only grown up with the song that they sing now.
that's actually the point I was about to make. I watched the original VHS as a child. That was my first time watching Star Wars, and I I know we talked about this a little bit when we talked about episode 5. I have faint, like, flashes of memory from episode 5, but there's a lot of stuff I really distinctively remember from my very first watch through of Return of the Jedi, but I have no idea what was there. No idea. I have no clue of what Lucas replaced. And I need to go back and watch the original VHS at some point, or just the original version in general, but I don't know. I don't remember it. So it's never really bothered me.
No, I don't really remember the original song either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Somebody out there isn't happy about it.
But it ain't us.
It's not us, though. Next thing I have is about seeing our old pal Chewie and Leia using Han's thermal detonator trick from Solo.
Yep. And I noted this too, and I literally just wrote, Leia has big balls.
She does. She's smart, but I mean, this was all Luke's plan. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from Leia's character, but just like overall, like the fact that Luke thought of all of this stuff is pretty crazy. I mean, I don't mean that Luke thought of all of it. I'm sure the other characters were like, okay, well, let's do this, this, and this. But I mean, like for the grand
like a
plan,
cooperative thing.
That like Luke pieced all of this stuff together is pretty crazy for Luke.
Yeah, no, definitely. And really my whole point was just bringing up the fact like how brave Leia was for bringing out the thermal detonator with who knows how many bounty hunters and guards were in that room, plus Boba.
Yeah, I just like that whenever they did Solo, they brought that in.
Yes, definitely. I really liked the negotiation, that whole scene in general, and then 35,000. Not too bad for Chewie. Not a bad price.
How dare you, sir? Chewbacca is priceless.
Listen, if somebody offered $35,000 for me, I wouldn't be offended.
I'm just saying Chewie has no price. But once Han gets out of the carbonite and he's talking with Jabba, they did a lot of stuff with Han's character in this film.
Man, I had like 3 notes before that.
Oh, go ahead then. Talk, please. Talk about all of your things.
So many things. I'm so sorry. Not really a lot. I just wanted to point out seeing Lando like getting how excited, not just Lando but Leia. Those are 2 things that I very distinctly remember from my first watch through, is just being so excited when they both of them taking off their masks and revealing who they are. But then I also wanted to talk about Desert Space Frog and how cute I thought it was. I had completely forgot it was there. I know it's just a super random background shot, but I love it.
It took me a second to understand what you're talking about, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just a really quick scene of a giant frog eating something crawling on the ground out in the desert. I love it.
And why? Why? I mean, obviously, within the film, it's to show the passage of time.
Right.
But why did they choose to do it that way?
Because they can, I guess. I don't know. Okay, sorry. Han, Jabba, Han's hibernation sick. They're talking. What's your note, my friend?
Just like Han's character in this film, I feel like I wouldn't say he's super different or that this isn't Han. I would say it's just a different side of Han. And you notice it here whenever he's talking to Jabba after he gets out of the carbonite, that Han can't talk his way out of this one.
Right. And he
that's
really,
usually what we see from
tries.
Him. Yeah. That's usually what we see from Han, is that he's this smooth guy that can talk his way out of anything. And with, just recently going over Empire, like I can see how this Han and Empire Han are the same guy and how he was transitioning into who we see in Return.
Right. Yeah, and I think this was just a really, really important character moment for him. And And this is something that I'm going to talk about a lot more once we get to the sequels. But I think one of my biggest complaints about it is with Han and Leia, they're kind of exactly where they are and who they are where they were at the beginning of episode 4. And that was just a little frustrating to me because we get to see all this really great character development for both of them between episodes 4 and episode 6. And then it just kind of feels wasted. And I know that in universe they explain that by the loss of their son and how it separated them and how they went back to quote-unquote the only thing they knew. But I don't know. I just always felt like it kind of wasted their character development throughout the original trilogy.
I can see that because I used to have a problem with Return of the Jedi Han, and I don't know. I'm just trying to look at things differently and look at the really big picture of Star Wars and understanding like the characters and what they're going through. And because, you know, regardless of how you feel about the sequels, you can't change them. They're there.
Oh yeah,
They're part of the story
for
now.
Sure.
So lately, rather than hate them, I've been trying to understand them more and why they made the choices they did for the characters that we've been watching for years and that some people have been watching for a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. And
So
no,
that's kinda where
I
I'm at
definitely
with them.
I have my issues with the sequel. And the reason I brought that up here is because that is probably one of my biggest, but I don't hate the sequels. I think there's great moments in all of them, and I think, you know, they are enjoyable films.
And there's nothing wrong if you don't like the sequels.
And there's nothing wrong if you hate them. Which, again, I don't hate them, but it's okay if you do. You don't have to like all of Star Wars.
No, you don't. But there's something really important that we need to talk about.
Okay.
Luke entering Jabba's palace. 1, wearing all black. And 2,
Yep.
the fact that he is force choking Gamorreans right out of the gate.
Yes. Okay, so here's what I wanted to ask you. It was a very... It happened so quickly. I don't think he killed them. I think he just knocked them out.
Oh yeah, he just choked them till they were unconscious. I don't think he killed them.
Or alternatively, the reason I was thinking that is because how quickly it happened compared to when Vader does it. It just really made me think that he didn't kill them. But maybe he did, and he just killed them right away. And what we're seeing Vader doing is actually, like, he's purposely holding it out to torture them more before they die.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the whole, like, one of the big overarching things in this film is that you constantly have to question, what is Luke gonna do?
Right.
And so obviously that's what they were doing with, you know, Luke's entrance to the movie and everything, is because whenever we have that cliffhanger on the last episode of, okay, is Darth Vader really Luke's father? Well, where does that leave Luke?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. So I just wanted to ask you how you felt about it.
No, I don't know. I think it definitely lends to what you're saying on whether or not he will, you know, being on that anticipation / anxiety of not knowing what he's gonna do, and that seeing him use his father's iconic move definitely lends to that. But I don't think he killed them. I agree with you. I think he just knocked them out.
Maybe. Who knows? What do you have next?
Because
mine is just a line.
Mine isn't until the Rancor.
Oh, okay. I've got one thing. Is Luke's line whenever he's talked to Jabba and everything, and now he's like being handcuffed, no, it's before he's handcuffed, but he's talking to Jabba, and he tells Jabba, don't underestimate my powers.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I was like, George Lucas, you done it again, sir.
You son of a gun. Yeah,
because
no,
I
that's
mean,
a really
obviously
good point.
Anakin says something very similar in episode 3 between him and Obi-Wan.
Exactly. And we've talked about the parallels between the two, and again, I mentioned this last time, but I really think the big difference between Anakin and Luke is Luke didn't have Palpatine grooming him since he was a child.
Right, but the thing with Luke is he doesn't need Palpatine grooming him, because Luke's self-doubt and lack of focus on what's going on presently is more than enough or equal to the things that Palpatine was doing to Anakin. Luke just does it to himself.
Yeah, you're right. Good point.
I'm trying to get you ready for the sequel trilogy so I can explain why they did to Luke what they did to Luke. So every time we go through a new movie, I'm just giving you more theories.
Yes. And honestly, I think I see where you're going with it. And really, that, I'll just say this now, and we will get there when we get there, because it happens almost immediately. There is one specific reason that I didn't really like the sequels in terms of the direction they went, and I think no matter what they did, it probably wasn't going to be something I necessarily really loved. But we will get there when we get there.
Okay. But yeah, no, I just like that Luke saying that line, and then whenever we see episode 3, Anakin saying a very similar line. But it's a completely different way. Even though it's almost the same line, it's meant differently.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm at the Rancor though now.
And then Luke, despite C3PO best warnings, Luke falls into the pit.
Yeah, no, I don't really have much to say about the Rancor. The Rancor is just one of those, anytime I see this movie, I just watch the Rancor scene because I just like it. It's just fun.
I do too.
I like the Rancor.
It's really great, and it's again one of those scenes I very distinctly remember from my first watch through, and just being so amazed at Star Wars and what it was, and all these cool things and all these cool aliens. I think really my only two notes in terms of that scene would be the poor Gamorrean. I always felt so bad for him. He was just trying his best. It wasn't his fault he fell in. Oh wait, no, actually I had a few notes. He runs to the door. He's trying to pull it open, like physically lift the gate that's blocking him. And I was like, I literally just wrote, "Use the Force, Luke." And then he turns around and he sees the button, and I'm like, "Use the Force." And what's he do? He throws a rock. And I just always thought that was so funny.
Yeah, why throw a skull whenever you had the Force?
Oh, was it a skull? Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of lends to
that's
the fact
again
that,
like, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think that lends again to the fact that Luke isn't quite fully a full Jedi yet. He still has things to learn. He's close, but not quite there.
Well, I mean, again, going back to Clone Wars, whenever the Jedi were, like, you know, very prevalent, and there were many of them, like, of course, like, they use the Force all the time. Luke has no teacher, really.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not going to think about using the Force for everything. And we see throughout the film that he still has, like, it takes a lot for him to use the Force still.
Right. And again, I mentioned this in the last one. I think it really handled, just the trilogy overall, really handled Luke's power crawl very well. Because even now, we see him, he's so much more powerful than we saw him at the end of Empire, and yet he still has a lot to learn.
Yeah, he's not just this crazy, powerful guy who can do whatever he needs to do. As a hero,
Yep.
It makes him more, maybe not realistic, but, like, more relatable, I guess. Well, I guess realistic,
Yeah, no,
too.
definitely. For sure. Okay, I think the last note I have in terms of the Rancor scene is just the guy. I always felt so bad for the guy, the Rancor trainer. I don't know his official name or title, but he clearly loved that thing, and it just makes me so sad every time I see it.
Yeah,
Like,
I actually have the little figure of the Rancor trainer, and I don't remember his name. I don't have it with me. It's in storage in my parents', but one day I will
Nice.
get him.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's always just, there's so much excitement and relief when Luke escapes from the Rancor pit, and it's almost immediately turned into this sad scene as you realize, like, oh wait, somebody cared about this thing. This was something's pet, and yes, arguably it definitely needed to die, but someone cared about it.
Did it need to die, though? How do you know that? How sentient was that Rancor, Elijah?
You know, you bring up a good argument. And I think a part of it was timing, but, you know, if Luke had thought it through a little better, he might have been able to close the door before it crushed the Rancor. But also, maybe what would stop Jabba from just throwing Luke back in if he didn't? A lot to consider here.
I'm just trying to mess with you in your whole questioning what every being in the Star Wars universe feels at this point.
Listen, I mean, if people can have arguments here on Earth, real life, about if eggplants feel pain or not, I can argue about if gonk droids and rancors feel pain.
Yes, you can. That was the gonk droid being tortured. I'm sorry to go back.
It was.
Yeah, the gonk droid is being tortured. I'm sure that destroyed you inside.
It did. I was so sad. But did it actually feel pain? Again, we'll talk about that later.
In the exclusive
okay.
episode of Animal Squadron.
Okay. I think my next note, it's in terms of Luke. Again, I know I mentioned this a lot, but it's literally just Luke so confident, and that's when he tells Jabba, this will be the last mistake you ever make.
Yeah, and that actually goes into my next note about how we see almost all of our heroes together again, and how Luke and Han have this great dialogue there of a couple lines, and he asks, well, how are we doing? And he says, oh, same as always. And he says, oh, that bad.
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
that whole
And
just exchange. I'm like, man, just it's so good to see their friendship like that.
yeah, and I think that's something else that's really important to point out. You mentioned how almost the whole gang was together, and they basically were, because Lando was still there, but he was still hidden, and just how smart of a plan it was to have them reveal themselves in stages and not just all run out guns blazing.
Yeah, because old Luke would have definitely done that.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have anything until the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, I'm on the sail barge too.
Okay. Really, I love seeing the Sarlacc pit. It's all gross and has teeth, and I'm pretty sure it didn't have its beak in the original version.
I think that was added later as well.
Yeah. And again, it's something I know it's not there, but I just haven't seen the original version in so long that I'm not really sure, again, what was there in its place.
But does it change the movie at all for you that it has a beak?
None. Zero. It's still a big sand creature that eats people.
The sail barge, I love the sail barge. I want to hang out on the sail barge. I want to hang out in Jabba's palace too. I've been wanting to hang out in a lot of Star Wars locations lately.
Yeah, it would be great. I don't know. I really don't know if Jabba's palace would be one of the places I'd want to go to. But I get it. There are a lot of places I would want to visit.
And I love the fact that R2 is just this mobile little mini bar for all of the guests.
Yep.
and that he's
Gotta
like
take
enjoying it.
Advantage of him somehow. Probably
I
the
know, but
easiest
the
work
fact-
he's had in ages.
You're
I mean,
not
come
wrong.
on,
He's
consider
probably
his
like,
other
This is a
jobs."
break.
Yeah.
That's true. I just love it. He's just like going around like doing his little whistles and stuff, and he like it seems like R2's having a great time, and 3PO's like, R2, what are you doing? Like, we've got to figure out how to get out of this, man. And he's just like, I'm just serving drinks.
And I think a part of that is, again, C-3PO didn't know the plan. He had no idea what was going on, and R2 was just confident, like, yeah, Master Luke's got this. We'll be fine.
Yeah, which actually brings me to Luke being out on the plank.
Yep, that's my next
And-
note as well.
The how Dave Filoni in one of the Clone Wars episodes remade like this
Yep.
exact scene, and I just loved it so much, and it makes my heart so happy.
Me too.
Which makes me
Just-
wonder. I hadn't thought about this. Do you think that R2 came up with this whole plan and told Luke because of that mission that he went on with Anakin?
Yep, you're exactly right. Because his
Was
memory
this-
wasn't wiped.
Yeah, so
This was-
was this really all R2's plan?
Yep, I think so. I hadn't even thought about that.
I just thought about it now, so.
Gotta love R2. But yes, I think that was a really good point bringing that up. And again, just the parallels between Anakin and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm really sad, but I was writing a note and I missed the force kick.
Ah, shame.
Yeah.
I
mean-
I think my next note
What do you have?
is in terms of the lightsaber, and I just wanted to point out, like, this is the first time in terms of the movies that we see that the world, I guess, saw a green lightsaber. Before that, it was just blue and red, and how cool that must have been.
Yeah, it's like that there's another color out there. And you know why,
Yeah.
right? That they made Luke's green in this episode, don't you?
I feel like I heard about it somewhere, but I don't remember.
It was a technical issue. They couldn't make the lightsaber blue because of the background was all blue.
Right. Yeah.
And back then the technology, I mean, was amazing for the time and is still pretty amazing. But the stuff they had, like with that much blue in the background, they couldn't have a blue lightsaber as well, so they made
Yeah.
it green. And that's the only
Wow.
reason that
Yeah.
Luke has a green lightsaber.
Which, I mean, is really awesome because it opened the door to all the different lightsaber colors. But my whole point of bringing it up is there are a few scenes through the original trilogy that, like, I just wish I could have been there in the theater watching it live with a group of people who'd never seen it before. You know, just seeing the Luke, I'm your father scene, seeing the fact that there are other lightsaber crystals, seeing which we'll get to in our next part, the reveal of Luke and Leia as brothers, like, just these really impactful scenes. And I know the lightsaber isn't quite as impactful, but I do still think it's really cool.
It's impactful for you.
It is impactful for me. Good point.
Yeah. My next thing is just how quickly Jabba just gets killed. I mean, it's
Right?
not quick, but like it's crazy that past this point in time, we don't get any more Jabba because obviously he's dead.
Right. Right.
But we
Which,
hear
I
so
mean,
much about him for such a long time throughout the original trilogy, and then we get him for like 10 minutes of screen time.
Yeah. And then he's just gone.
Along with Salacious Crumb.
Along with Salacious Crumb. I think my next note is in terms of Han randomly, accidentally killing Boba Fett. quote unquote killing.
Yeah. No, Boba got dealt a bad hand in the original trilogy.
Right? Right. And like, I'm really glad we've got so much extended lore on Boba to flesh out his character more and make him who we know him to be today. But like you said, really, really bad hand. Like, that just sucks, his jetpack going off and falling into the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, not the coolest end for like this guy that's been the silent, like, cool guy in the background for the past, well, if you count the add-in into New Hope, and then he's more an Empire, but like, he's just this cool guy in the background, and he gets kind of a bad end.
Yeah, which I'm glad they brought him back. His scream though, hearing him scream as he's falling just made me laugh.
Hey, it's Star Wars. You got to have that classic comedy somewhere.
Of course. I think I only have one last note for this scene. And that's when Luke gets shot in his hand, and the fact that his robotic hand, and yet he feels pain.
I've said it too many times in this one episode. What is your obsession, sir? But no, I wrote that down too, so I can't really say anything.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. Just the fact that it was built well enough that it actually connects to his nervous system, and he could tell that it hurt him.
Oh, yes, that is true. But it's also for a large plot point and overarching theme that we'll get to explore in part 2 of this episode.
Yes, definitely. Do you have any other notes for us?
Yeah, I'm just sad that the sail barge blew up. That's it.
Me too. But I'm sure there's other ones. I'm sure, whenever we get to go to Tatooine, there'll be others for us to use, of course.
Yeah, whenever we go visit Jabba's palace and take one of his sail barges out. Maybe Salacious Crumb will be there. You can hang out with him.
Yeah.
I know how much you love Salacious Crumb.
Robots are sentient.
I think you guys might be best friends if y'all ever met.
Probably. Hey, how did we go through this whole episode and not talk about Bib Fortuna? Did he die?
I know. I was gonna... No. He's in Mandalorian, Elijah.
Right, and he got all big. Big Bib Fortuna.
He got chunky.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Good for him.
I don't know what Bib Fortuna was doing, but he wasn't there.
Yeah. Maybe he knew. He could probably tell and decided to stay back. But there are other Hutts. Did none of the other Hutts come and seek Jabba's throne? Has Bib Fortuna just been chilling as the big boss?
I guess so. I mean, he was like the steward of Jabba's palace.
Right. We'll explore that more as we talk about the Mandalorian. But also, it wasn't me this time who spoiled the Mandalorian season 2. Haha.
Yeah,
we got him, boys.
Oh well.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time. Well, we are actually going to split this episode up into 2 parts. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the next one. We do not have a listener question for the week, but if you'd like to submit any of your Star Wars related questions, you can send that to us at animalsquadron@gmail.com. Sorry, again, that is animalsquadron@gmail.com. I was already planning for when I was going to say again, and it just kind of meshed into one phrase. Anyway.
Unforgivable,
we're available
sir.
there.
Unforgivable. This is a
you're
professional
probably gonna have
podcast,
to find a new host.
and I expect you to be better, sir.
I know. You should probably just find someone else to host it with you.
I've been trying. You're still the only one out there.
Ha ha ha. The only option is keeping me in business. Anything you want to plug?
You, as always, my friend. Keep growing.
You're too kind. Thank you very much. I think I just want to plug real quick the Elements of a Great Adventure podcast. If you like fantasy or D&D, you should definitely check that out. That is a D&D, a real play D&D podcast that I'm doing with a few of my other friends. It's really good. You should check it out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate you, and we will see you in the next episode of Animal Squadron. Bye-bye now.
McClunky.